Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad. Even though we were discussing this subject on today's DC Universe Daily Live, I think it's a subject that needs to be continued in its discussion. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing my job as a DC platform, a DC YouTuber, predominantly, even though I like to talk about a multitude of entertainment, television, and movies. So, is Steven Spielberg going to direct the Superman movie? I can't tell you he definitely is, and no one can tell you he's definitely not. There's many people out there and many platforms, if you want them, to tell you there's no way this is going to happen, and it's definitely going to happen. I'm not going to tell you neither. But potentially, it could definitely happen. So if you've been hiding under a rock in the past 24 hours, let me update you with what's going on. David Zaslav, the CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery, and Peter Safran, the co-chair of DC Studios, met with Christopher Nolan and Steven Spielberg. Now, this is how this meeting happened. It was out in the open, in a restaurant. I think it was for lunch. It started off with Zaslav and Spielberg, then Peter Safran showed up, and then Christopher Nolan showed up. People think because the other two joined later on that it's just a kind of random lunch between mates. I don't think so. You could be looking at a scenario where Zaslav said, give me some time with Spielberg first, then you come afterwards. So there could have been a plan for this arrangement. I think it's a proper meeting. I also think it's a PR exercise, as I said on today's DC Universe Daily Live. On the same day we heard these people had lunch together, we also heard that David Zaslav cancelled Westworld, which really triggered the progressives. So he definitely wanted some positive PR. But it's not merely PR spin. He's meeting with Spielberg for a reason. And Christopher Nolan being around the same table as a Warner Brothers CEO is huge, considering what happened last year between him and Jason Kilar when he swore he would never work with WB again because of their day-and-date plan. So just for Christopher Nolan and Spielberg and Safran to be around the same table is huge. So this can't be about anything else but DC, because Peter Safran was there. And Peter Safran is the one who's going to be doing the business side of DC Studios. And of course, James Gunn is the one who will recruit directors, have a plan, have an arc, have different levels, different phases. All that stuff is going to come, and we're going to get announcements for that. Now, what's going to be interesting is in the next slate, it's going to be just as interesting what's not in the new slate than what is in the new slate, because I think some things that were green-lit by the studio that Hamada wanted to do are no longer going to be there. One of the reasons you're seeing Westworld cancelled is because it's a production and an involvement by Bad Robot, the production company owned by J.J. Abrams and his wife. Now, Zaslav has a disliking, a distasting of J.J. Abrams. He's not happy that Emmerich made an arrangement with him, a non-exclusive one that cost a lot of money. My prediction is he's going to be cancelling everything that basically Emmerich greenlit for Abrams and Bad Robot, and he's just going to allow this contract to run down. But back to Steven Spielberg. I think, look, there's something going on here, and I understand that he's working on The Colour Purple with WB, but I don't feel this is what this meeting is about, because Peter Safran eventually turned up to this meeting. So I think at this moment in time, we have to look at the kind of issues kind of logically. Spielberg was going to direct Black Hawk for DC, which is a 1940s Second World War kind of DC story that most of us have never heard of. And if you do know the details of it, please at me, at Movies TV Mad, over on Twitter on my timeline. Please don't DM me. I think it protects all of us if we have proper kind of public timeline kind of conversations rather than private ones. That's just the way I feel about that. So he could be doing a Black Hawk movie. The Black Hawk movie he was originally supposed to do, or there could be a Superman discussion here. So we know that David Goyer and Christopher Nolan wrote the original Man of Steel movie. So if Nolan is around this table, I feel, like I said on today's DC Universe Daily Live, that Nolan and Goyer will continue writing for this character and continue the story from Man of Steel, including the Codex storyline, which is something that Henry Cavill has spoken about in the past few years. He always said he liked Man of Steel and wanted a direct sequel to Man of Steel. So I believe with Nolan round that table that Nolan and Goyer will write Man of Steel 2. And Spielberg directing this would be the perfect storm. But if Spielberg is there to discuss Black Hawk instead of Superman, then there's a vacancy for a director, because I'm pretty confident now that Nolan and Goyer are going to write Man of Steel 2. It's just a hunch I'm getting, especially Nolan being around the table with the CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery after all the history with the previous leadership. He's there for a reason, because a year ago he wouldn't have been seen dead talking about even the weather with WB. So I feel that Nolan and Goyer are writing the next Superman movie. I have a feeling. But who's going to direct it? Could it be Christopher Nolan himself, who claimed he couldn't do it nearly 10 years ago, and that's why he brought in Zack Snyder, which was a good decision in terms of, you know, how Snyder photographed Superman, how he used his cinematography, and how he used VFX technology as a paintbrush, as he always does. Man of Steel is one of the most stunning modern day movies. But could Christopher Nolan now feel he could direct a Superman film? Sure. Is it likely? Who knows? Nobody knows here. So you've got the potential of maybe Nolan writing, co-writing and directing the next Superman film. You've got the potential of Spielberg doing it, but there's also maybe a chance of Zack Snyder doing this, because if it's not Spielberg, and the reality is, it maybe isn't Spielberg, and probably isn't Spielberg as much as we would love it to be Spielberg. If Spielberg can do a Superman movie, I don't want anyone else to do it. I wanted George Lucas and Steven Spielberg to write and direct a Superman film for years, because I love Star Wars, I love Indy, and I think the collaboration between Spielberg and Lucas has pretty much given us some great results. And that would be my dream. But George isn't going to be involved in this. Obviously, if he was, it would be a great honour for me. I think the reality is here that Nolan and Goyer will write Man of Steel 2. And the reality is here that Nolan is going to go into bat for Snyder. Because Nolan is a loyal guy. He normally works around the same people. And it would make sense that he would want Zack Snyder to direct Man of Steel 2. I'm quite comfortable with this. I'd be happy just for Spielberg to direct Black Hawk and get the movie that he wants. And getting the old original Man of Steel team back together to do this sequel makes absolute sense, everyone. And for me, it will be a wonderful result. So if it's announced that Nolan and Goyer are writing the Man of Steel sequel and Snyder is directing it, it's perfect. Snyder's not involved in the story, he's involved in the visual story, while Nolan and Goyer lead the narrative. I think Man of Steel was a great story, and even though I wasn't one of the ones who hated Zod's neck being snapped by Superman, I can see why people were upset by it. But this could be the stage in Superman's evolution where we get Superman saying, I know what it's like to kill someone. I never want to feel that way again. It's something I feel we should have got at the end of Man of Steel. But also I think if Goyer and Nolan's original Man of Steel sequel script was made into a film instead of BVS, I think we would have got that anyway. That was the studio. They decided they blamed Goyer and Nolan for Man of Steel not making around $1 billion. and they allowed Snyder to continue with BVS. They're the ones who wanted a Batman versus Superman movie because they felt bringing in Batman and Superman together would bring in the results of maybe a $2 billion movie. And it didn't have those results. They tried to cheat their way to success, and that was never going to happen. So I'm going to put my flag, my mast, on Goya, Nolan, and Snyder being involved with a Man of Steel sequel. And I'd be very excited for that. This has been Movies TV Mad. I'm Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection. And I'll see you again tonight when I'm live. Until I see you again, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen.